You might remember that the Sadducees, unlike the Pharisees, did not believe in the, let's call it, miraculous, supernatural. They don't believe in angels, demons, the precursors to Christadelphians. They don't believe in the resurrection. The Sadducees here are giving Jesus really a ridiculous, it's like, it reminds me of when we talk on nonviolence and people say, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this scenario? And they put unlikely scenario on top of unlikely scenario, and that's what's happening here. So it's a sort of, what about this, Jesus? Well, what about that? So they're obviously, painting a very unlikely picture. But behind this, there's also a very interesting thing that's going on, because the Sadducees are testing Jesus' Torah observance. So what do I mean by that? They don't believe in the resurrection. Does your belief, Jesus, in the afterlife, in the resurrection, go against Torah? Because what the Sadducees are actually alluding to here is a Torah commandment you find in Deuteronomy 25, as some of you might know, called the levirate marriage, which is basically this principle that if my brother's wife dies, I have to take care of them. So it's actually a test of the Torah as well. I'm just giving you here different sides. But they're doing it through this false dilemma of a two-option thing only. So it's either or, not and or also. In other words, they're only giving Jesus the two options, which is really a false dilemma, because Jesus presents very ingeniously a third way. And this reminds me of the nonviolence issue. Jesus gives us a third way to nonviolence, by the way. So he says, no, wait, what about this? In the resurrection, there will be no marriage. Now, just to be clear, we believe in the kingdom, the saints, Christians, people who will become immortal, will not any longer have any sexual relations, any children. And I think that comes really from this teaching. So we believe that that's going to be our condition in the kingdom. It doesn't mean that the nations, remember, in the kingdom we're going to reign, we're going to do something. We're not just going to float in the heavens, but we're actually going to be doing stuff on earth. The earth was made for man, says the psalm, I believe. Not the heavens. The heavens belong to God of the universe. The earth belongs to us, so we're going to take care of the earth. So this obviously does not mean that the nations will not be having children. We know the prophecy in Isaiah 65, I believe, where, someone who dies 100 years will be considered cursed or something wrong with them. So obviously people will be having children, but we believe from this teaching by Jesus that we will no longer have husbands and wives, children. Gender, yes. I don't think we'll be genderless or transgender. So just to clear that up about marriage, Jesus uses their own Torah, by the way, to prove resurrection. This is key, because when you get into a discussion about the resurrection, especially with unbelievers, we usually just, go to the New Testament. But actually, we have the Old Testament. Yeah. The Old Testament does have resurrection teaching, although not as broad and extensive as the New Testament, but it is there. And the classic one we know, Daniel 12, the one sleeping in the dirt, in the dust, be woken up. But Jesus doesn't go there. So he doesn't go to Daniel. He actually goes to a passage or a verse in Exodus 3. Because the Sadducees, apart from not believing in the miraculous, supernatural, angels and demons, they're a weird bunch. They only accept the so-called five books, the Pentateuch. So Jesus is super smart here. He goes to Exodus 3. It doesn't mean, by the way, he's the God of the living, not the dead. It doesn't mean these people are living. It doesn't mean the patriarchs are living. I guess you might read that. I think what it means is that God's covenant with the patriarchs did not end when they died. Because remember, all the kings, and I did a list long ago, all the kings, every mention of every king and their end involves them sleeping with their fathers in the dust. I think that's the phrase in the book of Kings, the book of Chronicles. So it doesn't mean they're alive. It means simply that God's covenant, his promise to them and their families did not end when they died. So the moral of this story is that Jesus both upholds the Torah commandments, they cherish the Sadducees, to care for widows while not denying the belief in the resurrection. That's why it stuns them. They're like, man, wow, this guy just, he went to our books and he actually showed us, and now hopefully they went home and thought about it.
Yeah.
Some of them repented and accepted him.
Yeah.